Okay, I want to give you this scenario and you tell me if it sounds familiar to you. Your partner seems quieter than normal. Maybe they seem a little bit distant. They haven't done anything wrong. Nothing's really happened, but something in you starts to shift and feel a little bit unsettled. You start replaying conversations in your head from the last day, wondering, did you say something wrong? Wondering if they're upset with you. Maybe they leave the house and you're just like constantly checking your phone to see if they've messaged you or if they've called you, and they haven't. And now what kind of just started small is just like this building of anxiety inside of you. And it's kind of ruining your whole day, honestly. Or maybe you and your spouse did have a disagreement and you desperately need it to be resolved before you can relax. Like you physically cannot move on until you know that things are okay between the two of you. So you keep bringing it back up, asking if they are sure that they're fine. You're still looking for that reassurance in your relationship, trying to see if things are fine and solid. If any of those situations sound familiar to you, it's possible that you are dealing with anxious attachment. Today we're going to talk about what that looks like in everyday life, where it can come from, and just help you have a deeper understanding of yourself and how that impacts your relationship. If you're new here, I'm Catherine Solomon. I'm a licensed therapist and a virtual coach, and I love helping couples have better connection and overall just to help your relationship. If you're not already, please subscribe to this video and make sure that you like it, and then let's go ahead and get to it. Okay, first up, let's just talk about what anxious attachment style actually is to begin with. I think attachment in general can get a little bit overcomplicated when we think about it in terms of like the psychology of it. But here's the simple version. Attachment theory basically says that the way we learned to connect with our earliest caregivers, usually parents, shapes the blueprint that we carry into all of our close relationships as an adult now. It's not a personality flaw. It's usually like a learned pattern. It developed for a reason, and it made sense in the environment that we were formed in. Anxious attachment often will tend to be created if the caregiving or the home wasn't necessarily consistent. Not like a bad, abusive kind of situation, just not necessarily predictable. Sometimes the connection was like super warm and present with whoever the caregiver was, but then other times it might not have been available at all. So as a child, your nervous system kind of just like learned to stay on edge as like aware of protecting or like being vigilant, kind of like monitor closeness. Maybe you sought reassurance a lot because sometimes you just really weren't sure if things were like fine with you and your parents. Let's say maybe your mom, if she was upset with you or upset with your dad, would just say that things were fine, but you could like read the room and things were not fine and you weren't really sure, like, was she mad at you? Was she just mad at your dad? Is she just stressed? Like, what's going on? Like, you just really didn't feel settled. And so that hyper awareness or hyper vigilance has just carried into how things are for you now as an adult. It probably felt like it kept you safer as a kid because if you were not blindsided, usually it hurt a little bit less. So now it's just normal to you, just kind of how you've always operated. So let's talk about some of the common ways that it can show up. I mentioned this one earlier, but seeking reassurance. This is probably the most widely seen kind of pattern. You might ask if they love you all the time. You might ask the same question in different ways because you didn't really like the answer that they gave, and you're just really trying to make sure that they're going to consistently say the same things. And the need for reassurance isn't the problem. The problem is that no matter how much reassurance you get, it doesn't feel like it fills the tank for very long. And that's because the anxiety is coming from inside of you. It's not coming from them. Okay, the second thing is that you read into everything. If you get a short text response, if their voice seemed a little bit clipped, if they took a little bit longer to respond than normal, if they didn't pick up the phone. For someone with anxious attachment, those situations are not neutral. With these like data points that get analyzed and interpreted, and there's this feeling of like something is wrong. Are they upset with me? Like your brain cannot let it go. And of course, that's exhausting for you and your spouse to be on the receiving end of that. The third thing is that someone with anxious attachment can have difficulty with space. If your spouse needs alone time or needs like time to process something, it can trigger a fear response inside of you, even if there's no actual like physical threat or danger. It might feel like rejection or that they're pulling away. So you might find yourself texting them a bunch or calling them a bunch, feeling unsettled if plans change or something kind of gets just thrown into the air. And you just need a lot of check-ins to try to like calm yourself down and feel like things are okay. The next one is the concept of like this urgency in conflict. This is a really big one. I see this one all the time. Basically, it's the concept that unresolved conflict is You don't like the messy middle where you're like in a disagreement, but it's not fixed yet, or they're not ready to talk yet. There's this like urgency to talk it out quickly, to like figure out what's going on, to like not let the conversation stall. And oftentimes that can make it worse if the other person actually needs more time to process, or if both of you are flooded and so triggered and the emotions are so heightened that you need to actually like both calm down to like be able to be grounded and talk kindly and effectively, but you just can't do that because you just like can't stop talking about it. And then the last one I want to highlight is people pleasing. Sometimes anxious attachment can show up in a way that you minimize what you feel like you need for the benefit of your spouse. You want them to stay happy and stay close to you, and so you'll do whatever it takes to keep the peace. Maybe you say you're fine when you're not, or you go along with things that you don't really prefer to do. Because underneath, there is this huge fear that having specific needs or wants or desires will displease and push them away, and you cannot be alone. Now, I want to take a moment here and talk about what it's like for the other person, because I think sometimes if you have anxious attachment, for example, you might be really good about learning about yourself and like understanding your anxious attachment, but you might not fully understand what it's like for your spouse. And I feel like that's a very important piece to the whole equation. So if your spouse is someone that's on the receiving end of this, after a lot of time, here's a couple of things that might happen for them. They might start to feel like nothing they do is ever enough for you. They give reassurance and it works for a little bit, and then the anxiety comes back and so more reassurance is needed. And that cycle can be really draining for them. And it can sometimes lead to someone wanting to pull back, not because they love you less, but because they just feel like they can't win and they're just like not sure what to do, and it can just feel really exhausting. And the painful irony about that is when your spouse would pull away even slightly, that just like exacerbates that anxiety inside of you, which teaches your nervous system, or what it thinks it's teaching it, is that the relationship isn't safe. So those anxious behaviors, those like protest behaviors kind of just increase. But then if your spouse pulls back in even more, then you increase and you're just like triggering each other basically. This is a pursue withdraw cycle that is very, very common in relationships. Now, understanding this is not to blame yourself, not to be upset at you or your spouse. It's just like an understanding. It's helpful to understand what the pattern is so that you can do something about it. I kind of actually just want you to sit with it for a minute. If this is something that you're recognizing as a dynamic inside of you or in your relationship, realize how knowing that is actually really helpful and really meaningful. A lot of times people go their whole lives without being able to put words to what the experiences that they're having, what they mean, what they are, who they are. Sometimes people just feel like things are hard, or they just feel a certain way and it just like is what it is. But they can't quite figure out like why certain things come up inside of them, or why issues happen with them and their significant other. So knowing that anxious attachment is driving some of your interactions gives you something to work with. It's not just like, oh, this is who I am, it is what it is. It means there's actual patterns underneath that can shift with the right understanding and tools. Also realize that like understanding a little bit more about anxious attachment is just the starting point. It's not the finish line. Knowing that you have something doesn't automatically flip the switch and make your nervous system become different. There's usually going to be some more deeper work that is involved, and that's totally okay. I just want to like normalize and set that stage for you. That's actually why I have a resource called the Attachment Style Masterclass that is the deeper dive to help you, whether you have anxious attachment style or you have avoidant attachment style. Avoidant is very common in that kind of like pursue withdraw example that I was talking about earlier. This masterclass really helps you, one, identify what your attachment style is, even if you're like fully not sure, or even if you do know, it continues to develop that understanding. It helps you shape your behavior and your responses, and you get a lot of concrete tools so that you can no longer feel like this anxious attachment is basically driving your relationship. There's a video and a workbook. You can go at your own pace and start applying what you're learning. So if this video has you thinking like, I've got to learn more about this, you're definitely going to click the link in the description that will take you to getting access to the masterclass. Before I wrap up, I want to leave you with a couple really important things. First of all, understand that your attachment style isn't like your destiny forever. Attachment patterns are learned. So what is learned can be unlearned and rewired. It takes work and intention, but I have absolutely seen people move from attachment styles that are anxious or avoidant to security. In fact, to give you an example, when I first got married, I was definitely avoidant, and I've learned very quickly how to transition so that now for many, many years, I've been in a place of security. And it's just been so much easier for communicating with my husband, and our conflicts are so quick and easy. And so I just want to kind of give you that example from someone that was avoidant and now is on the other side, just realizing like, wow, life is a lot better when I learned the tools that were necessary. Second thing I want you to take away is that your spouse's response to your anxious attachment is not rejection. Sometimes they're genuinely just tired. Sometimes they're stressed about something that is unrelated to you. Learning to pause before assuming negative interpretation about your spouse's behaviors is so important. The lens that you look through is with an anxious attached lens. But if you can shift that and kind of shift some of your thinking as well, it will dramatically help how you see all of these different interactions. The third thing I want you to understand is that anxious attachment often comes with a deep capacity for love. The attunement, the care, the investment into your relationship, like those are really, really powerful gifts that you bring. The goal is not to become someone who cares less. That's not it. It's to feel more secure in the love that's already there. Also, a quick touch point, if you are anxious and avoidant, you're in that relationship together, that dynamic is extremely common and totally something to be worked through. I have another video coming out specifically on avoidant attachment, so if you're not subscribed, make sure that you are so that you can watch that video as well. I hope that this video was really helpful. I hope it created the beginnings to having deeper awareness and understanding of where you're at and how that all works together in your relationship, and to go deeper and start really unlocking a lot of the concrete tools that you're going to need to develop security and a healthy relationship. Go ahead and grab access to the masterclass that is in the description for you. And if you're in a season where it feels like a video is just not going to cut it and you really want to work one-on-one or in a relationship like a couple session with me, there's also going to be a link in the description for how to reach out and we can see if we'd be a good fit to work together, because I'd love to support you guys. Leave a comment below. Tell me if any of this sounded familiar and if it resonated with you. I read every single comment. I would love to hear from you. Make sure that you like this video as well, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Take care.